Okay, I'm live here with CodeWhisperer. I'm going to be doing some live coding today, and I'm going to dive into using AWS CodeWhisperer alongside Cargo Lambda, which allows you to have Rust functions on AWS. So I think this will be a very interesting combination of technologies, and I'm going to do this in local Visual Studio Code just to kind of mix things up a little bit. So let's go ahead and get started here. To start with, you can see that I've opened up something called Simple Browser. You can find this from the command palette. You can put in websites. So it's kind of nice to be able to look at something while I'm coding, maybe to look at documentation, but keep it all on the same screen here. And then if we go to CDK, CodeWhisperer, you can see all these are part of the AWS developer tool set here. And we can see that CodeWhisperer is actually enabled. So what I would do really first off is look at the get started guide here and make sure that I've got all this working. So let's go ahead and do this locally because I'm running OS 10. Although this does actually work on Linux as well. I've actually done this, but we'll just say here brew tap cargo lambda cargo lambda. Here we go. So we see that's already there. And if I say brew install cargo lambda, it will actually not only check to see if it's installed, but also update it if I needed to. But I'm all set, so I don't need to do anything. All right, so now that I've got cargo lambda, what can we actually do? Well, we can do this. We can say cargo lambda new lambda project and then cd into that. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to say, cargo lambda new. Let's call this one AWS, or let's call it S3 bucket lister lambda, something like that. And now it's going to ask me some questions. Is this function an HTTP function? Yes or no. I'm going to go ahead and say no here, and then go ahead and also say I don't want to receive any events. So this looks pretty good to start with. And then I'm going to cd into this. So I'm going to say new lambda, or I'm going to go to the file system here to look at where I'm at. And I have, if I refresh, a S3 bucket lister. So S3 bucket lister. Okay, great. And now all I need to do is take a look at what's inside of this code. So if we look at the main function here, you'll see that we've got some documentation, which I'm going to remove just so it's shorter. So the code is less verbose here, and I can put it all on one screen. So I'll go ahead and do that. So we've got the request and the response, which is part of what you would do with Lambda. And then we've got the main body for the function, which is right here. And I can also remove the comments just to make things super tight here so that I can really look at it in almost one screen if possible. Let's go ahead and do that. That looks good. So yeah, this is really it. There's a request, there's a response, and then there's the function handler that does all the work. And then this is basically boilerplate code. So you don't really need to worry about it, but let's even uncomment that or remove the commenting as well, just to make it super tight here. Now, one of the things that I typically do like to do is use make files. And so I might as well just copy one. I think I have probably a make file laying around somewhere here. So what I'll do is go to one of my other projects and pull one in real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and grab it real quick. Let's pull this in here real quick. We'll say cargo lambda AWS lambda Rust. This looks pretty good. I've got one I can just grab here, and I'm going to paste it in. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and say touch make file, like that. Now that I've got this listed, what I will do next here is just see the different features that are available in the make file. So like make Rust version. Let's just double check everything's working here. Actually, did I put that in the right location? Let's double check here. Make format. Not sure why the make command is, because I didn't save it. That was the problem. Here we go. Make Rust version. There we go. So we got this thing working. And then there's some commands here like testing, linting, etc. And then if we go back here, you can see the next steps here, which is you can do watch, and this will actually run it, and you can see the changes as they're happening. So we could try that. First, we could just say cargo lambda watch here, and this will compile it, and then again, watch the code. So it is nice to have this simple browser here so I can look at it without needing to go anywhere else. And then if we go to next here, it's going to say test your function. And so because I didn't change anything, this should work, which is I'm going to send in this payload right here, which is data ASCII command hi. So let's copy that. I'm going to open up a split terminal, and I'm going to do that command. Whoops. On buffer here. So let's actually maybe get rid of this terminal. Get rid of this terminal. Make a split, and then I guess the copy didn't work. Maybe that was the issue. Copy here. Yeah, the copy paste is having issues here for me, but let's just do it manually. So we'll say cargo lambda invoke, we'll say dash data ASCII, and yeah, kind of annoying that the copy paste is not working, but we'll deal with it. And go here. There we go. That looks pretty good. And command. And if I scroll this over a little bit, command hi. There we go. So everything was able to be executed. So we got this working locally here. But now let's make it do something a little more interesting than just that we're invoking it. So this is where the CodeWhisperer would come in. So I don't know exactly how well CodeWhisperer will understand this, but let's go ahead and just try some ideas out. So I'm gonna try to write something that is a bucket lister here. And so I probably will need to look at my other examples. So I think I have an S3 list here. And if we look at this cargo file, look what they've got. They've got AWS SDK and S3. So I'm going to probably need to put that in there. So if I go back to this, I go to the dependencies here, you can see the cargo lambda tool put in lambda runtime, Tokyo, tracing, etc. But I'm going to need to add a couple more, which are these two, AWS config and SDK S3. Those look pretty good. And then if I go ahead and I just say essentially cargo build here, maybe make this go over here for a second. Cargo build, we can double check that those work. So that's one of the most useful things you can do with Lambda, right, is to combine Lambda with the SDK. And there is a Rust SDK. And if I look at some other code I have here, you can see that in order to list buckets it's pretty easy, right? Like there's not a lot of code here to list a bucket. So I'm going to try that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a helper function here, and we can say list AWS buckets in account, right? And so I could actually look at the other example for the import, although I'm curious if it'll be smart enough to know it. Let's see. Let's see if I just put it up here, is CodeWhisperer smart enough to do anything? I don't see that. So we'll just put it in there ourselves. And then we're going to say list buckets and accounts. So we can build a function here. So we can say function. Well, there we go. So it's starting to wake up here. And it's going to say let shared config. That looks good. And S3 client. That looks good. Let's list the buckets. And I guess we would print the response. Although I think I want to return back the response as JSON. And so I would want to change this actually to well, let's keep it simple to start with. But we actually want to return the response. We want to say return respond return a list of buckets. So this would be basically I think that's all we need to do actually is I think we can just do this. List buckets and account. Let's even and return the list. So we're going to have to change the result a little bit here. Okay, so we're going to say, for example, let buckets, bucket and buckets, print it. That's printing that. We want to do like a list. So we'll just say, in fact, here, say let bucket list equal, and we would, I don't know what the type is of that, but we would potentially just want a list, right, inside of here. So let's take this out. Let's even start over again. Let's just say let's get a better prompt. Let's just say this function calls the SDK for S3 to list the buckets and returns a vector of buckets. Let's try that out. So if we say function list buckets, there we go, vector of strings is what we want. Let the shared config, let the client, let the response, and then we're going to make a new empty mutable vector, which is basically a list. If you're a Python person, we're going to then push those items to it, print it, why not? There we go. And then we return back the buckets. There we go. Now, this seems like an error here because we don't actually want to return right there, right? Because that's there. We want, I guess it was out of the it was out of the loop, so I don't really need to worry about it. What is this saying here? It says error await is only allowed. So we need to add async here. I think it's like async function get list buckets. That fixed that. No method named unwrap. So we now have another error here. So how would we fix this? We say send dot await unwrap. Okay, because we're all async now. And then use of a moved value. Consider calling as a reference or immutable to borrow the. So I think what we need to do is do this, right? Borrow it. correct? But let's try it again here. Let's here, and let's regenerate our code. So this, say, for bucket and buckets, there we go, and each bucket to the vector. Look at, and then I think that's it. That's all we really care about. And then we need to close it out. So we need to go there. So that's better. Okay, we got this. So it's dead code because we're not calling it yet. So now we need to put this inside of here. And so we would basically just keep that empty payload for now. And we would get the buckets, let the buckets equal list of buckets. And then we want to return the response, which the formatting does look a little bit strange here. Return the buckets as a string. How about that? So we'll say here, what we need to do is a string in the response. We're going to have to format this string. So I have to say let buckets equal bucket.join. Does that work? And then the command here, we don't need this anymore. We can just basically do this. And we can say like buckets. Message is equal to, it might even just be this. This, right, I think. So response and keyword let. Well, do we even need to do that? Could we just say response? See if we can ask it to regenerate it. Turn the buckets as a string in the response. And let response equals this message. Okay. And then I think we can just close this out here. I don't think we need anything else. Now what's it? Oh, we have a mismatched type here in terms of what we're getting. So buckets dot found result found this expected result response. So we might need to change the response type here. That it looks like the issue is returning back. Well, what we could do just to get past this bug is I could reverse all this, and what I could do is basically just print the buckets, keep everything the same temporarily. So if I go here, yeah, and what I could do is actually just keep everything the same, but just call it inside of here temporarily to just get past that error. So let's go to this. We'll just say let buckets, and we could just say print buckets. There we go. So let's see if this works. So if I type in lambda watch, or I think, what was the command? It was cargo lambda watch. Uh-oh, we have an issue here, which is unclosed delimiter on line 17. So, oh, we didn't close it because I was undoing some things. But yeah, that's why I like to do a make lint, which I should have done. We can say make format, which just does cargo format, and I can do make lint. There we go. And then if I do cargo lambda watch, build it. Okay, so to invoke this lister, what we can do is just run that same command. There we go. So it listed all the buckets. So not bad. That's actually reasonably good experience with CodeWhisperer, with a language I'm still getting better at, and also the framework I'm still getting better at. It feels like a pretty good experience. So what I'm going to do next here is deploy this thing. Now to do that, let's just follow the instructions. So what does it say? So you can build it. So let's go ahead and build a release here. So again, I'm not sure why I can't copy paste, but who cares? We'll do cargo lambda build dash release here. Looks good. Now this is pretty cool that I can use the ARM64, which is awesome because it's going to save me money. I think that is actually a pretty cool one. In fact, why don't I just do that? We'll wait till the build happens and I'll do it again. I guess what I would need to do is do a cargo clean, or even I could remove the target directory actually. If I want to get really brutal, I can just say arm-rf target, and then I can do up arrow here, and we can say -- arm64, right? So why not? Let's target Gravitron because it saves us money. Who doesn't like saving money? Get this thing cooking here. Okay, so now that we've done that, we need to now push it to Lambda, to AWS. So we just type in cargo lambda deploy. So pretty easy. So cargo lambda deploy. And it's ridiculous actually how fast it is to deploy because it's a binary. And this is going to deploy that lambda. Great. And then we can invoke it remote by, I have it in my S3 bucket lister lambda. I think that's going to be the name. So I think what we would do, if I look at my makefile, I think I have an example, would be remote. Yeah, so you'd say basically cargo. Well, it's going to be easier if I just paste it in here because it's going to take command hello, and then this is going to be called, let's see if it lets me paste it in there. Yeah, there we go. Remote S3 bucket lister lambda. So this will be make AWS invoke. Uh-oh. I might have, oh, I didn't put the payload in correctly, which is the issue, which is going to look like that. So let's do that. There we go. It's the escaping was incorrect. Let's delete that one. So let's do it again. Oh. Panicked. Oh, I know what the issue is. So because we're calling the AWS ecosystem, I would have to go to that Lambda and give it some privileges in order to make it invoke it. So that's a pretty easy one to fix. I'm kind of curious though, if it inside of here, I guess you probably would need to do AWS CDK support if you're calling something in Lambda. Now, another way to solve it would be that I could just go to my Lambda function, which I should be able to find here, which would be called what would it be called? S3 bucket lister lambda, S3 bucket lister lambda, this one. And if we look, I would have to actually change the permission. So I think I have AWS already authenticated. So we can just do that real quick. Let me just go to my AWS account in another terminal just to keep things simple. I won't do different screen sharing. And I will log in and I will go to that Lambda. And what I'm going to do is just change it so that it has the ability to make API calls, which is something you can do from the console. So we'll type in the S3 bucket lister Lambda. Okay, I'm finding it in another terminal. I'm going to the configuration of it, and I'm going to permissions is what you would need to do. And then you would just edit your permissions so that there's a role that has privileges to do whatever it is you're wanting. So I think that I did that. Now let's go back here. And if I go into this screen, say, oops, there we go. If I just do the invoke, there we go. So that did work. The difference though is that because it's printing, it's not going to show it out. Now I am curious though, if I went to this bucket lister here and I said invoke, and I just say the invoke in here, it might be easier. So let's just do command. We can say hi, and then I can say invoke. I think it'll give me the output. Yeah, there we go. It gives me the output. There you go. There's all of the buckets. So I can actually debug it remotely. So pretty good demo, I think. It shows the capability. So I did this completely with CodeWhisperer. I didn't have to do anything with Copilot and things. I had a couple missteps, but basically I think it went pretty well. So what I'm going to do now is just check this code in. So say get status, go up a level here, add this. And that's a pretty good sort of a demo for doing Cargo Lambda, adding an example. So yeah, probably next week what I'll do is maybe build something slightly more complex with Lambda, since this went reasonably well. And I'll see you then.